Trade deadline is just over a week away. Let's take a look at not just the obvious candidates, but some other guys we should keep an eye on for the Sabres in terms of selling. And what about buying? Is that crazy? Maybe it's crazy, but we'll talk about it and get you ready for the Sabres and the Whalers tonight here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You know, if you don't watch the show on YouTube, you wouldn't have been able to see me point to this beautiful Hartford Whalers jersey that I've got over here on the side. But welcome in to this episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. And for you everydayers, especially throughout the entire season. If you're not an everydayer, we hope to talk to you tomorrow as well. Locked On Sabres, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Be sure to check us out on our YouTube channel. You can like and subscribe us there. Sneaky Joe DiBiase on a Thursday, on a game day. Sabres are in Carolina, but they're playing against the Whalers tonight, right? All right, let's have some fun with it. They're playing the Whalers. The Carolina Hurricanes are having their Hartford Whalers theme night. They're wearing these amazing green jerseys. You know, I have one of these, and obviously it's right here. And if you're watching the show, you would know that if you're listening. Anyways, I thought about wearing it today. I thought about wearing it on the show, but we're still caring about the Sabres winning and losing these games. So do I want to wear the jersey of the team that they're playing tonight? I wanted to have it present, though. So it's hanging in the back here, but I am not wearing it. I am not wearing the Whalers jersey. So I don't think you could say I'm jinxing them, unless you would think it's a reverse jinx if I were to wear it. Funny story about this jersey before we get into all that we've got ahead for you. We're going to talk a lot of trade deadline on today's episode. We'll give you some updates on the Sabres roster-wise, Jason Zucker and his injury, and tonight's matchup against Carolina. That'll be a little bit later on in today's show. We'll talk plenty of trade before that. But before any of that, I do have one story about this jersey. It's usually, I think it's my favorite hockey jersey that I own. Tied with my Ryan Miller Team USA jersey, the white with the USA going diagonal. This jersey, though, right next to it, just a blank green Hartford Whalers jersey. It's the perfect green. It's what I wear on St. Patrick's Day, actually, most years. So I have this jersey, and the night of the 2018 NHL Draft Lottery, that is the Dahlin Lottery. Jason Botterill is the Sabres general manager, and I don't even remember why, but I was working that night at WGR. It was running the board for that lottery, which we were broadcasting. And I don't remember why I wore that jersey. And the Hurricanes had just begun wearing it. I didn't buy this from the Hurricanes. I bought it from like a vintage NHL shop. But they had just begun wearing it. So again, I'm wearing this jersey. I'm at the studio. And the lottery is taking place. And you know how they do it. They start at the high numbers and they come down to the low number. So the 10th pick is blank. The 9th pick is blank. All right. So you're just check. You're checking teams off the list that are going to win this lottery and get Rasmus Dahlin. And at the time, and even to this day, I would say it was the second most stressful lottery as a Sabre fan, other than the McDavid lottery. The McDavid lottery is like, I went out to a bar watch party and was devastated when they didn't win it. Dahlin, though, was like, how was he sold? It was, this is the best defense prospect since the 1970s, was said a lot. So it felt like there was a ton on the line. So you're going team by team, gets knocked off, and then how they used to do it, and maybe they still do, is they would get it down to 3 teams, and then they would take a commercial break. And the Sabres and the Hurricanes were 2 of the 3 teams that were remaining. And then maybe they came back, they eliminated one more team, I think it was Columbus, and there's Jason Botterill and the Carolina GM at the time the two teams standing side by side. They go to another commercial, and they're going to come back and decide who's getting Dahlin, the Sabres or the Hurricanes. And there I am sitting in my Whalers jersey, and everybody all around me is going, oh, you jinxed them. You totally jinxed them. You're wearing the Whaler jersey. The Hurricanes are going to win this lottery. And they didn't. They got Svechnikov. The Sabres did win it. But I almost got universally crucified because I was wearing the jersey, the alternate jersey of the team that almost won Dahlin away from the Buffalo Sabres. And Dahlin, by the way, I'll actually jump right into this. We'll kind of skip the order here and get back into the matchup later on. I want to talk trade. But Dahlin is the guy that I am locked in on for tonight's game, Sabres and Hurricanes. He is playing at a Norris level, going back to when he came back from injury on December 20th. Dahlin, in the 23 games since he returned from injury in December, has 26 points. He has 3 goals and 23 assists. 19 of those 23 assists are primary assists, by the way. 14 of those assists, which is number 1 on the team. He ranks number 2 in the league in that time span in points by defenseman. The only player that outranks him in those 23 games is Zach Werenski. And 23 assists, he ranks second in the NHL in that time span in total assists for any player. The only guy ahead of him is Nathan MacKinnon. Dahlin's got more assists in that time span than Connor McDavid does and all the rest of the players in the league. 57.4% expected goals for percentage. That is second best on the Sabres in that time. Only Zach Benson is better, but Dahlin plays double the minutes that Zach Benson does. So you have a much larger sample size. You have a stronger caliber of opponent out there. So Dahlin's number to me is actually more impressive than Benson. Goals for percentage. When Dahlin is on the ice in that time, the Sabres have scored 60% of the goals that have been scored. All the other advanced numbers just look through the roof, elite level defenseman, and we've been watching it. The Nashville game before the break, I thought they actually lost that game, and I thought that was the greatest game I've ever seen him play. He was unbelievable, and he's been amazing in the 2 games since they came out of the Four Nations break. He was great at the Four Nations. Dahlin, to me, right now, I think, to be fair to Columbus, and I want to give the tiebreaker to the guy that I'm not watching every night, right? Because you're going to want to give your guy the hometown bias. You're watching him every shift. I'll say right now that Dahlin at this moment is the second best defenseman in the world. At least that's what he's playing like for 2 months now. 2 months. He is the second best defenseman in the world. I'll give Zach Werenski the title of number 1. He's been unbelievable. He is really driving Columbus to the playoffs, and they're in a spot. And he's going to win the Norris if they make the playoffs. What's funny about Dahlin, he doesn't have a Norris. In fact, he hasn't really finished even close to winning the Norris. 2 years ago, he had a shot at it, but he slowed down at the end, got hurt. The Sabres are not going to make the playoffs. But if they did, if they made the playoffs with their 2.6% chance that Money Pucks got them at this morning, and they were to knock out Columbus to do it, and right now that is the team in the final spot. If they jump Columbus in the 2.6% of the simulations out there, I bet you that Dahlin wins the Norris in that scenario. I bet if they make it, the level of play he's playing at, over a point-a-game player in the last 2 months, almost a point-a-game player on the season, if he drives them to the postseason, if a miracle happens in the final 2 months, I think he wins the Norris Trophy. And I don't think that's that crazy, but it also probably isn't going to happen. Anyways, that's what's going on with Dahlin. He's been awesome. Went a little long on Dahlin there, so let's take a break here. When we come back, we'll get into the trade deadline. Not just selling, but throw the idea out there of buying, what they would have to do. They got a few games here, and they'd have to do some work in the meantime. Get to that coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Very excited to talk about on today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast, our new sponsor, Trade Coffee. If you are like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee. I mean, my alarm goes off at 4:40 in the morning. That's my first alarm because of the 6 a.m. show at WGR. 4:40. That's my first alarm. And I got that delay brew button set every night. I got to have the coffee ready to go. And Trade Coffee. That's why I turned to Trade. Let me tell you, this coffee is next level. Don't settle for grocery store brands that aren't cutting it. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S. that brings your fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. For me, it's important too because, like, again, how early I get up, coffee shops aren't even open yet. So I need the best of the best, and Trade is the best of the best. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you're like, they will hand pick the perfect match for you. They've got a quick quiz. It takes under a minute. They match me with the roast that was fresh, smelled incredible, and tastes even better. And it's super cool packaging. Mine has a cat in outer space on it. So Trade Coffee subscription makes it so easy. No more last minute grocery store runs or settling for whatever is on the shelf. You do the subscription, it just shows up at your house every month. Super easy. Make it as easy as possible. And if you don't love your first bag, no worries. Trade will replace it for free until they get it right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners of Locked On Sabres 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL. That's drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL for 40% off your first order. drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are 8 days out from the NHL trade deadline. Let's start to get into it, and let's really get into the basics of it. And there will be more creative ideas that we can get into. I'm looking forward to hearing from some texters and some tweeters about trade ideas you might have going into the deadline. Maybe we get more clarity about availability of players like Elias Pettersson and others. Brock Besser, maybe also in Vancouver, is reportedly on the market. Casey Middlestat, by the way, is reportedly on the market. Not that I think they would bring him back, but we also might find out about guys we didn't think were available that do become available in the next 8 days. We'll see. But let's get into the basics first. Let's get to what's on the surface and the housekeeping that needs to be taken care of by the Sabres. The first question is a simple one that they have had to ask every year except for maybe one in the last 14 years. Are you going to sell? Are you going to sell? Your place in the standings would indicate you're a seller. And that other GMs in the league, when they're thinking about what they want for the stretch run, they're going to look at the standings and they're going to call Kevin Adams because he's at the bottom of the standings. And the Sabres have two guys that are having very good seasons and are on expiring contracts where they will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. Those two are Jason Zucker and Jordan Greenway. And I do think they're a little different. Let's start with Greenway. Greenway, to me, is not likely to be dealt. I think the Sabres badly want to re-sign Jordan Greenway. He is not an amazing hockey player. He is not going to score 20 goals in a season, I don't think. He has scored 12 in his career. He's only got 3 in 22 games. So, again, 10 to 15 goals. But he really does possess qualities that the Sabres don't have a lot else of. They don't have a lot of size and physicality like he provides at 6'6", 231 pounds. He has actually looked like a better skater to my eyes this year than he had either of the previous 2 seasons with the Buffalo Sabres. And he is their best penalty killer. And I think he's developed into one of the best penalty killers in the National Hockey League. Greenway, and he is someone you definitely, on a good team, you definitely want him on your bottom 6. You want him on your third line, playing 15 minutes a night. In a pinch, you can put him up on the top 2 lines. You don't love that. You don't want to have that be the plan. But if in a pinch, you got to put him up there, it's not going to look horrendous. And that's really what separates, it's one of the things that separates him from like a Beck Malenstein. Because if you had ever had to put Beck Malenstein or Sam Lafferty on one of the top two lines, playing with Tage, Greenway was playing with Tage and Tuck the other night when Zucker went out, like it'd be a disaster. The guys wouldn't look like they could keep up. Greenway can hold his own and can provide some value. So I think they want to re-sign Jordan Greenway. 3-4 year deal, $4 million per year, which around the league might look like a bit of an overpay, but the Sabres have all the cap space in the world and the cap is going way up. $4 million is not that bad. If you do inflation, league inflation, salary cap to salary cap, it's more the equivalent of like a $3.7 million deal. So that's what I would go for. 3-4 years to Jordan Greenway, maybe 3 for $4 million. I would not trade him. And if I couldn't get a contract done before the deadline, I would take the risk. I would rather have the risk of, or the upside of getting him signed on a new contract than I would to just take a second or a third round pick. That's my personal opinion on Greenway. Wouldn't trade him under almost any circumstance. If a team called about a first round pick, maybe. I don't think that's in the cards at all. I do think that might be in the cards for Jason Zucker. It's possible that a team calls the Sabres and offers them something that maybe they're not expecting. When we talk about Jason Zucker, the big differences between him and Jordan Greenway, the number one thing is age. He is 5 years older than Jordan Greenway is at 33 years old. And good for him that, and he's well performed above the expectation of his contract and his age. He's got something, there's going to be a decline coming. Maybe it's not for 2 years, maybe it's not for 3 years even, or maybe it's next year. I would be less desperate to sign a 33-year-old Jason Zucker going into his age 34 season than I would be to get Jordan Greenway under contract. That's my personal belief. I feel like if I'm Kevin Adams and I walk away from Jordan Greenway, I just need to replace Jordan Greenway. I need to get the exact same thing. If I walk away from Jason Zucker, I think I have an easier time replenishing that with youth on my own team, somebody stepping up that's already on the roster, or I think it's easier to get a guy like that. At that age, I'll go shop around a 1 year, $5 million contract again and see if I can find the next version of Jason Zucker. I think that is more easily attainable than going out and finding a Jordan Greenway that has the size that he does and the versatility and the ability to play all over your lineup. So priority 1 for me would be Greenway. Priority 2 would be Zucker. The other reason why I think it's more likely Zucker is traded is I think it's more likely someone overpays for him. And it's just fact of the numbers. The offensive production, 44 points in 54 games for Zucker. And you've had teams that have overpaid. Barclay Goodrow was always the name I think of for this. A couple years ago, Barclay Goodrow, who was not, like, it was a third, fourth line guy, got traded for a late first round pick to Tampa. Tampa has kind of led the charge on this. I think Toronto's done it a little bit too. These great teams have kind of realized that picks at the end of the first round are not really worth that much. It's a crapshoot. They often don't even get NHL players out of those picks. So they're very willing, some of them are, compared to previous years, to give a pick like that for a guy it's not even considered that great. And Zucker, meanwhile, 44 points in 54 games, 18 goals on the year, veteran player. He has experience in the playoffs. He's played 52 NHL playoff games, most recently for Nashville last year. I think that Zucker could potentially fetch a late first round pick. If he doesn't, you can't find a team that's willing to overpay, then I might say the same thing with him that I'd say with Greenway. Hold on to him and just see if you sign him. And if you don't, then no harm, no foul. At least you gave it an extra 4 months to try to get a deal done. The only thing with Zucker that could be different with Greenway, the other thing that could be different, I should say, in terms of trading him or not trading him, Greenway's been here for a couple of years. Zucker, I wonder if because I think this happened with Taylor Hall a few years ago, and I bet it happens a lot in the league. I wonder if Adams and Zucker and Zucker's agent had a wink, wink, nod, nod agreement that, hey, if the season's not going well, then are you okay trading him at the deadline and giving him a shot to win a Stanley Cup? And if that type of verbal agreement was made when he signed here, and then you go back on your word by not trading him when he had the opportunity to get dealt, then that's the type of thing that can even harm your reputation even further with other players around the league. And maybe the next Jason Zucker will think twice about signing here because he heard that Zucker wanted a chance to win a cup and Kevyn Adams told him, no, I want to keep you for the rest of the year. That is a lot. It's a reach. I know it's a lot to say, but it does happen in the league. And it would make sense to me if that is exactly what happened here with Jason Zucker. So they'd have a conversation. They'd be checking in day by day, Kevyn Adams and Zucker's team, I'm sure, about, hey, where would he want to go? And is he okay staying here through the stretch run? Because if Zucker's agent says, I talked to him and he likes it here, but he just wants a shot to play in the playoffs, I think if you're Adams, then you'd have to oblige, personally. The other thing quickly on the deadline, and we'll get maybe a little more to this in terms of specific ideas, is buying. How close for you would the Sabres have to be to think about buying? And when I say buying, I don't mean a rental. I mean a guy that's got 2, 3, 4 years left on his contract that you're trading young prospects and picks for. Who could that be? Now, Pettersson's the name we've talked about the most. There are other names. Again, we'll get into them more specifically. How many in a row would you have to win? Because they have 5 games left before the trade deadline. If they won 4 of them, I think maybe the approach could be a little different. I still think they have time to change it, but they'd have to win almost every game now until next Friday. One of those games, in fact, the toughest of those games, I think, is this game tonight. Carolina, or as I should say, the Whalers tonight, and the Sabres are a huge underdog. We'll talk about the matchup, what the lineup's going to look like, injury updates, and what's going on with the Hurricanes coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. We'll go through the odds. I got my sneaky good bet of the night coming up in a little bit. And all those odds courtesy of FanDuel. When the game tips off or puck drops, the NBA and NHL action is just getting started. And there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback and stay in on the action, you're looking for a bigger payout. You can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or maybe the emotional hedge or maybe you're picking a player to hit a clutch 3, never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Sabres and Hurricanes tonight in the Whaler uniforms. It'll be a cool one. The Sabres are, though, a massive underdog for tonight's game. One of the biggest underdogs that they've been all season. In fact, we'll start right there with it. Tonight on the money line, the Sabres are plus 188. So if you bet 100, you'd win 188. The Hurricanes, meanwhile, minus 230. That is rare. You don't often see favorites in the NHL that are above minus 200, let alone minus 230. For example, tonight in the NHL, there is only one other team, it looks like. Oh, wow, 2. Hold on. I said it was rare, and it still is, but there's one team tonight, Tampa, minus 220 against Calgary. This is a line that is crazy. Vegas minus 410 against Chicago is pretty wild. Anyways, back to this game, though. Over under 6 for this game. Pretty even on the odds. Minus 102 in the over. Minus 120 on the under for this one. My favorite bet of the night. My sneaky good bet of tonight's game. I'm going to go for the anytime goal prop. And I'm going to go for Dylan Cousins. Plus 450 to score a goal in this game. He has not scored recently. 3 assists, though, the other night. His line with Jack Quinn has actually looked pretty good. And Greenway, of course, too, has looked really good in their one game that 2 games that we really got to see them. And they were buzzing last game. So I think they keep that momentum going. Their advanced numbers look pretty good. By the way, Cousins did score right before the break in Nashville, but that's his only goal in the last 11 games. So you could say going out a little bit of a limb here, but I'm reading into the tea leaves of a line that's really producing well. I'll take the center of that line, who's getting some shots on goal as of late. He has 6 in the last 2 games since the break ended. So Dylan Cousins plus 450 to score a goal in this game. The lineup for tonight will look the same as it did on Tuesday if Jason Zucker plays. Jason Zucker is a game time decision, according to Lindy Ruff. Blocked a shot on the weekend with his foot and only played 12 minutes last game. He will be a game time decision. If he doesn't play, I feel like you're going to see the Sabres go 11-7. They're probably going to dress 7 defensemen, and we'll see who that ends up being. Maybe Jacob Bryson, maybe Connor Clifton, who hasn't. When's the last time Connor Clifton played for the Buffalo Sabres? Connor Clifton last played on the Nashville game. He played in the Nashville game on February 8th, but he's played 2 games in the last month. I guess I don't really see a need to put him in the lineup, but his career is kind of ending maybe for the Sabres. I wonder if he's a guy they could actually move at the deadline for. You have to retain salary, though, right? $3.3 million. Who's going to want Connor Clifton for this year and next year, by the way, at $3.3 million? Nobody's going to want that. Yoki Haru, maybe. Yoki Haru, a UFA. Yoki Haru's been playing well, though. We'll talk about him specifically. I think he's a deadline guy as a UFA. Maybe more likely than Greenway and Zucker. But anyways, back to tonight's game. You're going to see Gilbert playing with Yoki Haru again, and the rest of it's going to look the same. And I am locked in on Rasmus Dahlin, as I mentioned earlier. Love him for tonight. If you like another bet, maybe you throw a anytime point prop, I should say, to get a point on Dahlin. Shots on goal props for tonight for Dahlin would be another area that I would look at. For Carolina, they are the second leading favorite to win the Stanley Cup by the betting odds. They are number 2. Now, they have kind of hit a rough patch here, but so is their whole division. They are 4-5-1 in their last 10. They're in a bit of a rut, and they're not going to win their division. They're 14 points back of Washington, but they are in second place, and they're probably going to stay there. They're tied with New Jersey for 70 points. And then Columbus is 6 points back of that. So you got Washington 14 points above those 2 teams, Carolina and New Jersey. They have Columbus 6 points back. We're really headed for a Hurricanes-Devils first-round series. Like, that's going to happen. I still like the Hurricanes a lot. They have not got it done in the playoffs. They have always been a great team. They have always been a good possession team. Their advanced numbers have always looked good. They've kind of figured out goaltending finally after that was plaguing them forever. The one thing that's happening with them, though, right now is Mikko Rantanen. Mikko Rantanen, the big trade that they made with the Colorado Avalanche, sending Martin Necas over to Colorado, who's played really well, by the way, with the Avalanche since he got there. They acquire Rantanen, who's one of the best goal scorers in the league. Right? Last year, 42 goals. Year prior, 55 goals. Like every year of his career, he's been amazing. And even this year in Colorado, 25 goals in 49 games. He gets to Carolina, 1 goal in 8 games. And it hasn't looked good so far. And it does kind of, it lines up with when he got there that they started struggling. And they can't get him to sign a contract, which was predictable. Rantanen, the reason Colorado dealt him was he continued to tell the Avalanche, I either want to hit free agency or I want to make like $14 million a year. He wanted to be one of the highest paid players in the league. And the Avalanche kind of snickered at that, I guess, and that's why they dealt him. And what is he saying to Carolina? I want to hit free agency. And the Hurricanes maybe should have expected that, or that was a bit of a risk on their part. That combined with him not playing well has made it a pretty disastrous trade so far. I don't predict that will hold. I think Rantanen is too good, too talented, too good of a finisher for him to not start putting the puck in the back of the net. He's playing with skilled guys. Carolina's got a lot of them. He plays the power play. Like, it's going to turn around. He's playing right now with Sebastian Aho and Andrei Svechnikov. Like, that's their top line. So I think that will turn around, but it hasn't looked good so far. The rest of the lineup, they are very thin down the middle. Jordan Staal playing second-line center tonight. Not great. Tyson Jost. Remember former Sabre Tyson Jost? Third-line center. In fact, you got a couple former Sabres. The bottom six, you got 3 former Sabres in the Hurricanes' bottom 6. Tyson Jost, Taylor Hall, Eric Robinson, who I believe has more goals still than like any former Sabre on the year. Maybe has Olofsson caught him. I'm not sure. Robinson on the year, 12 goals in 58 games. He had 2 for the Sabres in 40. He's still a fourth liner though at this stage in the game. So the Whalers uniforms, a Hurricanes lineup that is a little thin up front when you get down to that middle 6. The blue line though is still awesome. Jacob Slavin, one of the best all around defensemen in the world. Brent Burns too. So they've got the talent and they are a great team. They are a better team than the Sabres are. They're at home. So completely understandable to me why they would be a big favorite. If the Sabres are going to go on a miracle run down the stretch, they have to win games like this. They have to win games on the road in places they never win. They have not won in Carolina since 2016. Chad Johnson was their goaltender. Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco, the last time that the Sabres won in Carolina. It's been a long time. And they'll have to do it tonight. All right, that's going to do it for us today on the Locked On Sabres podcast. If you've got a specific trade or player that you're interested in, whether it's on the Sabres or on another team for the trade deadline, pass it along. Hit us up on our text club, joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres, where you can sign up for that. If you want to get us on Twitter, at LockedOnSabres or at Sneaky Joe Sports there. And Blue Sky, I'm at Sneaky Joe. Thanks for making us your first listen. As always, be sure to make your next listen Locked On NHL. Bringing you daily league-wide stories that matter, the local coverage that you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We will talk to you tomorrow, hopefully after a Sabre win, here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.